Okay.
You can tell them I was so anxious to have class that I waited.
Sherry was sitting last night in the room. She calls me like at 7:10, like, are you coming to class? I'm like, Sherry, it's Wednesday. But that happens also because our schedules are a little bit off. Okay. So let's get back in the swing of things. I hope everybody had a beautiful Pesach and we are rejuvenated and ready for more of good things, of only good things. Oh, Eileen is here. Okay, so I'm gonna actually, Connie, can I make you co-host? And if you see somebody enter, you can let them in. Yes, maybe. Sherry, I'm gonna take the co-host job from you. She says it's okay. Okay, good. All right. Okay, so today what I'm going to do is I want to cover 3 chapters, hopefully maybe even 4. I want to start with chapter 2 of this book. By the way, I had the ability and the time to actually go through the entire book over the holiday, which was, wow, what a great book. I loved it. Okay, so we're going to start with chapter 2. For those of you who are following inside, we're doing Rabbi Sutton's Pesukim of Bitachon. Okay, so chapter 2, page 24, we're going to talk about offer and offering, he calls this chapter. And here he's taking chapter 4 of Tehillim, verse number 6, and it says, offer sacrifices of righteousness and trust in Hashem. Okay, so the verse seems to combine 2 completely unrelated ideas, because what is an animal sacrifice, right? A korban, have to do with bitachon. And he tells us that according to Rashi, the answer is that the first part of the verse, which is to offer the sacrifices of righteousness, is not about a korban itself, a sacrifice in the literal sense, as like an animal that's getting burned on the altar. It is about perfecting our deeds, which Hashem considers it to be like a korban. And we do know, we do know this idea that, you know, the korbanos represent the nefesh habahamit, the animal within us, right? The animal soul. And we are familiar with such a concept. There is such a concept. However, he's saying, look, this only changes the question because it doesn't seem to actually answer it, because it still doesn't tell us what is perfect. If the korban has to do with our nefesh habahamit, with our animal, and we're trying to perfect it, we're offering it to Hashem to perfect it. What does it have to do with bitachon? Like, what's the connection between the 2 ideas? So he tells us that the answer, he tells us, is that our wrongful deeds, any character flaws, anything that we really need to work on ourselves, really stem from weak bitachon. And really, if you think about any midot, any qualities like anger, like jealousy, envy, all of these things, really at the root is lack of trust in Hashem, right? So anything of these animalistic traits that we really have to eradicate from ourselves, that we have to work on really at the root, are because we don't trust in Hashem. Because I don't trust in Hashem, then I'm jealous of what my neighbor has. Because I don't trust in Hashem, I get upset. I'm really angry when somebody, you know, cuts me off in the road or says something mean, right? I don't understand that everything is from Hashem, that nobody can help me or hurt me, as we learn in Perek Gimel of Shar Bitachon, the 3rd chapter, etc., etc. So he continues here. For example, a person who acts illegally or cuts corners in business, right? This is really something that people need to work on, God forbid. Where is this coming from, that a person should behave this way? Well, it comes from his belief that this is the only way that he's going to make money, right? That he doesn't trust that Hashem is the source of the money. He thinks the business is the source of the money, and therefore he needs to do whatever it takes so that business makes money. He has lost track of the fact that Hashem determines his income to the penny and will not fail to give him what he needs. So again, this is very, very, very important. And it's really why learning Shar Bitachon is so important. It's so fundamental because, again, the Rabbeinu Bachya really, really, like I've said so many times, really drills, like he nails how our faulty thinking, right? He catches all of our misguided misguided trust, misguided thinking. And so we really now start understanding how we think when we don't have bitachon. And so what we're doing here with Rabbi Sutton, going into the Pesukim, is really now reinforcing everything that we've already learned and reminding ourselves, because we know this is daily work and we need constant bitachon. Constant work. Okay. So the same flaw in bitachon drives someone to believe that he cannot afford to take time away from his business to learn Torah. We've said it many times here before, right? Or that they cannot keep Shabbat. They cannot close their business for one day, right? Or things, or go to minyan in the morning, for example, right? Where is this coming from? Because they don't have bitachon, because they don't trust that it is Hashem, the one who's providing for them, and that Hashem is never going to tell you to do something that's actually going to hurt you, right? We're completely misguided and confused. So it tempts him to glance at his office text and think about his business when he davens. It leads a woman maybe to believe that she will be unhappy or unattractive, or even like sometimes girls think they're not going to get married if she adopts a higher standard of modesty, right? All of this is coming from the animal soul within us that is tricking us to think that these things are real when they're not. It's a complete lie, because Hashem wouldn't give us something that is not for our benefit, that is out to hurt us. All these mistaken ideas ignore the core truth that if we rely on Hashem and we follow his Torah, he gives us what we need. And again, it's not just that if we rely on Hashem and follow his Torah, he gives us what we need. It's that he wouldn't put it in the blueprint if it was going to hurt us in a material way, right? This is a material world. Like, we are given the Torah to do it here as humans. So anything that Hashem has guided us to do is for our benefit. It's not going to be to our detriment. Therefore, the first lesson of our pasuk, of our verse, is that if we offer a sacrifice by giving up our mistaken perspectives to do as Hashem requires, we can trust in Hashem to ensure that we will not lose out. So now we start seeing why the connection, offer sacrifices of righteousness and trust in Hashem. And it's so interesting, because as I was reading this, I was thinking of how many times I heard friends of mine telling me, I have to send my child to a yeshiva. I'm going to say something a little bit controversial. Everybody can do whatever they want, but I'm just going to be very upfront here about the conversations that I've had in the past. I've just sent my child to a yeshiva or a school where they have secular studies, because one day they're going to have to go to college, and how are they going to make a living, right? And I remember thinking, like, there's something so wrong with this argument. And maybe because I come from that world, and as we're seeing the world develop today, we understand how messed up this thinking is. Because number one, how many of us don't know, how many of us know here, many people who never got a high school degree proper, who never had a secular class in their life, who only learned Torah their entire life and own empires, okay? So please give me that argument that only if you go to college, you're going to be able to make a living. And not only that, but nowadays we know the quality of humans, the grotesque quality of humans who come out of these institutions. I was writing something about my bio 2 days ago, and I put the place I went to undergrad and to grad school, and I was like, I don't even want to put it. Like, it's revolting, right? So anyways, the point being, we have to know that the Torah is true. The Torah is true. Whatever Hashem is telling us is true. It's because it's true. We might not see it. There might be such confusing ideas in our world, but as we get closer to the end, to Mashiach, it's like it's peeling away. We're starting to see it. How the facade of this. Somebody was saying, I think it was Lizzie Savetsky who was saying yesterday on a video that, she was talking about her family, but many of us who grew up in a more secular environment, as Jews, we really put such an emphasis on education. So for many of us, myself included, we grew up with this striving to go to the best school. Like she said, this was our religion, she said, right? This was the goal. But the facade has been lifted. Like, this was just idol worship. It's idol worship of the worst kind, right? We see that this is not education. I was learning with my son the other day. There was a sikha that the Rebbe gave I think in 1981 was there was an attempted assassination of President Ronald Reagan. I don't know if any of you remember. Some of you might remember, right? And it was shortly after, very shortly after, it was the Rebbe's 80th birthday. And the president sent regards, and the Rebbe addressed the president's regards, how incredible, how amazing it was that the president sent such warm wishes on his birthday, even though he's recovering from the attempted assassination. And the Rebbe took the opportunity to talk about the incident. And he said, you know, you can't argue that because a person grows up with fewer material resources, and maybe they grew up in the wrong side of town or the poor neighborhood, or, you know, with limited resources and limited education, and they didn't go to the right school, they didn't have the right opportunities, they end up committing crimes. Because the Rebbe said, here when you see a person who comes from the best schools, who had no financial troubles throughout his life, came from a wealthy family, who was able to attempt to assassinate the president. And this shows us, the Rebbe says, that education is not it's not what is taught in school. Education is not about the school that you have. Education is something that we need to instill in a parent, that there is an eye that sees and an ear that hears, that there is a God that is the creator of the world, that holds you accountable, that expects from you, that demands of you, that you matter. And when we take that out from the education system, and it doesn't matter whether you're poor or rich, if you take it out of the system, if you take it out of a child's consciousness, and we've taken it out of the top elite, highest echelons of education in this country, we took God out of everywhere. So you see where we are, right? Okay. When you take God out of it, that is the problem. It has nothing to do with whether, oh, okay, so they didn't have the right education. No. This person had the education. He went to the best schools. He didn't have any financial constraints that didn't allow him to get an education, right? And I was learning it exactly because of what's happening today. We started learning it together to really understand this idea. It's such a fundamental idea, but we've lost it. Unfortunately, we've lost it. And again, the everything is revealing itself, and the Rebbe's words are true, were true when he said them, and continue to be true, right? This is the core of education, that a child needs to know that the minute they're born, the creator of the world says, you matter, I need you in my world. And when a child knows this, that they aren't here by chance, that they aren't here to serve themselves, that there is a higher power that needs them, wants them, and is holding them accountable, that is expecting from them, they're going to rise to the occasion. They're going to think of their consequences, and that's the consequences of their actions. They're going to think of their responsibility that they have in this world towards society, not just self-gratifying, narcissists like we see these kids in these, God help us, in these college campuses. Somebody said, I just saw a video that they left disgusting havoc. Like somebody said, these are the young environmentalists. Look what they did. And I don't know which of the beautiful campuses it was. I think it was UCLA or whatever. I mean, it was disgusting, the mess that they left, right? And some of us said, you know what? They should make them go and clean it up under police surveillance. Make these narcissistic brats go clean up the mess. This is disgusting. But anyway, the point being is, a child needs to know. And when a child lacks this in education, and again, we have lost this in America over decades already, then this is what happens. Then we build a society that is completely self-centered, that doesn't think of the consequences of their actions. They are just out to make it for themselves. They don't care about anybody else. And this is why the Rebbe worked tirelessly to implement a moment of silence in public schools. A moment of silence, not to talk about God, not to teach religion, so that every morning a child could sit for a few minutes and meditate and think about God, about a creator, and that their parents at night should ask them, what did you think about during your moment of silence? And they should have a consciousness that their life is not random, that there should be a moment of pause and reflection in every single school. But again, we don't have it, and people are growing up with meaningless lives and self-serving lies. I mean, lives and lies, I guess. All right. Okay, so that was a whole rant on current politics, current situation. Let's continue on with bitachon and offer the sacrifices of righteousness. So he gives us another meaning here. And he says that a person might be perfectly willing to work on perfecting his deeds, but he finds the challenge insurmountable, right? Sometimes we really know that we have something that we really have to work on. It could be, it could be a tendency to be greedy or a tendency to be arrogant or angry, right? And it's very, very difficult. And we've struggled with it for years, and it's affecting us, it's affecting our relationships, etc. And he says that the Sefer Tzor HaMaor tells us in a different interpretation of the phrase and trust in Hashem, that when we are burdened by an innate negative trait, we can rely on Hashem to give us the power to change. If we do so, he will lift us above our natural tendencies so that we can perfect our deeds and our midot, our character traits. Thus, we're never hopeless to the cause. And here I want to pause a moment and emphasize this point, that we can rely on Hashem to give us the power to change. It's not just that we can rely. It's a little bit deeper than this. It's that we can ask Hashem to help us succeed. Because I want to take it back to Shar Bitachon, to the gate of trust. And the gate of trust, it says very, very clearly that there are 3 stages of achieving something in life. If you guys remember, there's the choosing, there's the planning, and there's the execution, the final execution, the final result, the result of the doing, right? You make a choice, you plan it out, and you finally execute on that choice. And the Shar Bitachon tells us that there's choices in the world of materiality, and there's choices that are moral choices. When it comes to what road am I going to take, what restaurant am I going to choose, what blouse am I going to wear today, right? Am I eating vanilla flavor ice cream or chocolate ice cream? Am I making steak for dinner? Am I making chicken for dinner? I'm not talking about whether it's kosher or not. That would be a moral choice. That would be a matter of Yer Shamayim. What am I making? Cucumbers in the salad or no cucumbers in the salad, right? When you're making a choice in this world, there is absolutely no choice. There's absolutely no choice, meaning Hashem chooses. You did not choose what restaurant you went to, even though you think you did. You did not choose if you went on this highway or the other highway, and you don't choose if you actually made it to the restaurant. When it comes to these 3 areas, Hashem is completely in control, meaning it's all bitachon, it's all reliance on Hashem. Now, when it comes to matters of Yira Shamayim, which is what we're talking about here, matters of I have a character trait that I need to work on. This is something that is a moral choice. It's something that is from the Torah that I have to work on, or I have to make any other choice that is a moral choice. We cannot rely on Hashem to do the choosing. We don't. We actually have free choice there. It's the only area in life where we have free choice, because Hashem already told us in the Torah exactly how to choose. So we have to look in the Torah, we have to have the proper guidance, the proper mashpim, the proper educators, and we know what the choice is. We also can't apply bitachon and say, Hashem, you'll execute, you'll do the steps for me, you'll plan it out for me. No, you have to plan it out, because you have been told how to do that. Now, the third step, the execution, the final completion of whatever that is, that's the only area where bitachon applies. So you see the difference? When it comes to other choices, there's absolutely no choice. You don't have any choice. It's all Hashem. It's all bitachon. You have to rely on Hashem that He's making the right decision about what restaurant you're going to eat at. He's making the right decision about what road you're going to take, and that He's going to get you there. But when it comes to you working on something or making a decision that has to do with your Shamayim, you have the choice in your hands. You have the planning in your hands. And the only area where bitachon applies is the final result. So here what we're saying is that if we know that there is a character trait that we have to work on, right? We don't just say, Hashem, oh, you're gonna fix it for me. I rely that you're gonna fix it for me. No. You have to fix it. You have to make the choice to fix it. You have to plan out how you're going to fix it. You have to go learn. You have to sit with a friend. You have to learn tricks to help yourself, right? What about succeeding? What about the final execution? There, he's telling us right here, we rely on Hashem, meaning we can ask Hashem, I am trying my best. I know that I have to change this. I am aware and I have decided to change it. I've planned how to do it. I'm making myself charts, notes. I have accountability buddy. I have whatever I need, right? I'm really trying. I went to the therapy, whatever it is, okay? Please help me succeed. I trust in you that you want the best for me. You're going to help me succeed in this. So this is actually very, very important, okay? So I hope that made it clear. I know I brought it back to Chassidut and Bitachon, but I just think he gave us here such a subtle, important point that it was worth reviewing this idea, okay? So, of course, 100%, we are never a hopeless case. We have to ask Hashem to help us with our character traits, but as I said before, somebody's coming in. As I said before, this is an area, the end result, we ask Hashem and we trust Hashem, okay? All right, so when an insult, this actually one time happened to me that somebody really insulted me in public. It was actually a very strange situation. There was an elderly woman, I think I shared it in class, and I had to stay completely quiet. It had never happened to me, such a thing, but it was really, really nasty. I don't think, Sherry, you were there, but it would have been in a setting where you would have been there, but I don't think you actually were there. And somebody called me after and said, wow, you were such a princess in a good way, meaning like you behaved so regally. And she said, I couldn't say anything because it's an older person and, you defer to authority. But it was like a very embarrassing moment because somebody insulted me in a way that was totally unwarranted, that came out of left field. And now I joke because I'm sure this person was going through a very hard time or was maybe not taking the right medication. I don't know. It doesn't matter. But the point being that it doesn't happen so often, but many of us have been in situations where we could have gotten insulted in a strange, out of left field way where we may not have even deserved it. Like, just like, where is this coming from, right? But we naturally might have a tendency to respond, right? And it takes a lot of effort to hold ourselves back. We might have a ready answer. We might have a few choice of words to defend our honor and put the aggressor in his place. And he says that Rav Yonasan Apes encourages us to reconsider that reaction by connecting our verse to the one before it. This is very interesting, which ends with the words, and be utterly silent. This is followed then by the verse we're learning right now, offer sacrifices of righteousness. So he's connecting this idea of be silent, be utterly silent, with offer sacrifices of righteousness. He explains the connection between silence and a sacrifice. Embarrassing a friend, literally making his face turn white in public, is considered analogous to shedding his blood. This is something that's said in the Gemara and the Talmud. It explains that the person's face turns white because his blood is draining from it in reaction to the embarrassment. And so the question is, how will this embarrassed person respond to the one who humiliated him? If he has bitachon, he will realize that his adversary was only an agent of Hashem, speaking words that for some reason Hashem wanted him to hear. So that's the important reflection. When something like this happens, the person with bitachon goes back and says, first of all, we hold ourselves back. And second of all, we need to reflect, again, because if Hashem is always in our consciousness, we draw it all down to Hashem. What does Hashem want me to learn from this? Like, there is a message here for me. And by the way, even though I'm saying that this person who insulted me was out of left field and not warranted, I did take some time to reflect on the idea. And there was something she was suggested that maybe I wasn't contributing enough in some area. Okay, I was too focused on another area of contribution in my life and not in that area. So there was a very positive message that I took to heart. I say, you know what? Maybe Hashem is. I don't know. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe there was more to learn. I have no idea. But I remember taking to heart. You know what? And discussing with my husband. Maybe there's a flaw in my character that maybe I could focus a little bit more on whatever it is. But the idea is that a person with bitachon will understand. Look, there's a message here for me. He will respond with silence. The spilled blood, the blood that drained from his face, then becomes the self-sacrifice on the altar. So that's the connection to our verse. We cannot bring korbanos today, but unbelievably, we have the power to earn that merit by staying silent in the face of an insult. As the Shelah tells us, the best possible kapara is being embarrassed. There's no physical pain or financial loss. The damage is emotional, and we can heal by simply reframing it, understanding it as Hashem's will. The truth is, there are many stories about this whole idea, and Stories to Inspire, that podcast I always tell you guys about. They often have these stories about this idea that when a person is humiliated in public, they have a tremendous power to actually bless somebody if they stay quiet. So I wish I could remember some of the stories, and maybe I'll bring them next week. But there's a lot of stories I've heard of this idea that then a person said to let's say the lady was insulted, and so the friend said, don't say anything, please, and give me a bracha, because the friend hadn't had children for like 10 years or whatever it was, right? And obviously they gave him a bracha and the miracle happened. So there's a lot of stories to this. So it's actually a very important concept that when we are embarrassed or whatever, we should hold ourselves back. All right, so I'm not going to continue with the rest of the chapter, but I'll do a little bit of the recap, and then we're going to move to chapter 4. So in the recap, it says that our righteous offering can be interpreted as our effort to overcome flaws and perfect our deeds. We can trust in Hashem to ensure that we lose nothing as a result of doing the right thing. As I said before, Hashem is giving us a Torah, a blueprint, and this Torah is not to our detriment. It's never going to hurt us. It's never going to affect us. And then he continues, if we have traits that are embedded and seem impossible to change, we can trust in Hashem to help us succeed. So remember that the choose and the planning, that's on you. You can't rely on Hashem to do that. You have to do it yourself. But the result is on Hashem, and that's where Bitachon comes in. You have to trust in Hashem that he's going to allow you to succeed. And more than that, you can ask him in your prayers that he should succeed. He should help you succeed. Another view of the righteous offering is silence in the face of insult. The blood that drains out of an embarrassed person's face has the merit of an offering's blood on the altar. All right, so he says, when you need to work on a mitzvah or a midah that is a struggle, and it's a struggle, think of the effort as your offering to Hashem and trust him to help you. Okay, so now we're going to go to chapter number 4. I want to do number 4, Bitachon and humility, on page 32. And here he gives us a verse, Tehillim 7, chapter 7, verse 2. Hashem, my God, in you I seek refuge. Save me from all my pursuers and rescue me. So in this verse, David HaMelech asks for help from Hashem, obviously, in two different ways. Okay, so let's look at the words. Let's look at the language. Hoshi'eni, that means save me. And then Hatzileni, rescue me. What is the difference between these two words? Okay, Hoshi'eni, Hatzileni. We know we just came out of Pesach and we said Hallel, so we use these words in Hallel. What was the difference here? The Malbim explains that Hoshi'eni is a plea for Yeshua, for salvation. This is the kind of salvation that a person needs when he's facing trouble. So your trouble is looming, is coming, and you need a salvation. You're asking to be shielded from dangers on the horizon, although you may have not yet begun to experience the impact, right? Now, Hatzileni, think of when you call, God forbid, you call Hatzalah. You call Hatzalah when something has happened, right? Something just happened. You pick up the phone, you call Hatzalah. It's a plea for Hatzalah, the kind of help that we need when we're already in the middle of a dangerous situation, right? You don't call Hatzalah when the pot of spaghetti is boiling. Okay, there's a possibility that somebody might get burned with the boiling water. No, you call Hatzalah if, God forbid, the boiling water falls on a kid or whatever it is, right? Okay. So here's the lesson. David HaMelech turns to Hashem for both, for the salvation and for the rescue, right? The Hatzalah is the rescue, okay? Hatzileni. But before he asks for help, he addresses his words to Hashem. Hashem, my God, in you I seek refuge. Save me from all my pursuers and rescue me. So lehatchila, from the beginning, what is his consciousness? It's you, Hashem. I am putting myself in your hands, completely in your hands. He knows that there's only one resource for anything he needs. The Chida finds a deeper meaning in these words. They express David's humility. He throws his case upon Hashem and his mercy, knowing that there's nothing he can do for himself without Hashem on his side, right? And this is an important lesson, right? It's all Hashem. And we have to know that with Hashem on our side, we are invincible. We are invincible. Today, there was an incredible speech. Maybe I'll somehow, oh yeah, I have a link. I'll put it in the newsletter for you guys when we put the replay, but there was an incredible speech. Oh my gosh, the Israel's representative to the United Nations gave an incredible speech where he was talking about this idea that we have Hashem on our side and that Hashem has saved us every time and we're here to stay, et cetera, et cetera. And it was every word of this. It's worth every minute. I'll send it. But anyway, here we're talking really about humility, the humility that I can't do anything without Hashem. Okay, by the way, knowing that it doesn't mean we're not humble. Like I'm saying in the speech that we have Hashem on our side doesn't reflect a lack of humility. It should be something that overwhelms us with the gratitude and the humility that we have a God who is reliable and dependable, and He is there to help us. He's there for us. Okay, it is actually a very humbling experience. It's not something that should build us arrogance. When we say we have Hashem on our side, you're not ever going to get rid of us. That's not arrogant. That is the confidence of walking with Hashem, which really comes from the humility of walking with Hashem. It's actually very interesting. We have to have things very straight. Okay, it's very interesting. They go hand in hand. A person is actually really real confidence comes from humility. Arrogance comes from the opposite of humility. Arrogance is the opposite of humility. Arrogance and confidence are not the same thing. Confidence is knowing who you are and who you work for. You work for the boss. You work for the CEO. You are an emissary of Hashem in this world. And that is very humbling, right? How could I not be humbled by the fact that Hashem has chosen me as a nation who can bring light and morality to the world? It's an overwhelming feeling and an overwhelming responsibility, right? All right, so the humility that David HaMelech had, that he cannot do anything without Hashem, that is the key to Hashem granting him the help he needs. So again, when we know who we are walking with, who we represent, Hashem is going to be there for us, right? What does it say in the introduction, the Pesukim of Bitachon? That when we rely on Hashem, Hashem is there for us in a revealed, obvious way. And God forbid the opposite. When we put our reliance and our trust in other entities, and we have so many around us to put our trust on, as we've learned in this class, right? Then Hashem steps further and further into the background. The more you rely on these entities, it's like you yourself. It's not even Hashem putting the curtain. You are putting the curtain on Hashem, right? You're making Hashem hide. But when we are active participants in revealing Hashem and knowing that Hashem is with us and trusting Hashem and walking with Hashem, despite the naysayers who might say, really, you think Hashem's going to save us? And there's going to be chapters on this that we're going to talk about soon. Yeah, I don't know if in this class or next class. Despite all the naysayers, despite even the doubts in our head that people put in our head, that the Amalek comes, the doubts that come, right? If we can focus and know that we are with Hashem and that Hashem is with us, then Hashem will be revealed with us, right? So it's really, again, it's a mirror effect. We create the reality. Okay. So in fact, humility is the key to receiving extra help from above. Hold on, somebody entered. Hashem loves humility and is repelled by arrogance, right? What is arrogance? Arrogance is me, right? Me, the whole cup, there's a cup. The whole cup is full of me. Therefore, I can't go in, right? This one happens to be empty, but I can't go in. Hashem can't. There's no room for Hashem. It's all me, right? We talked about the college kids, etc., and the arrogance and the entitlement. Okay, so here we go. Okay, again, what did we say? The loss. We kicked God out of education. We kicked God out of everywhere. Okay. The humble Sinai, way to Har Sinai right now, as we're approaching Shavuot, the humble Har Sinai became the setting for Matan Torah, right? For the giving of the Torah. And we know from Midrash that Har Sinai was the most humble mountain. And the reason Hashem chose Har Sinai among the other mountains is because because Har Sinai was the most humble of mountains, right? And the kids learn the song in preschool about the choosing of them. I'm not going to sing it, but we may have heard our kids or our grandkids sing the song, and this idea that Har Sinai was the most humble mountain and the other mountains were boasting and being boastful and saying why they should be chosen, etc. Now, we also know, going back to what I said before about confidence, that given the setting where the Torah was given was still a mountain. So it was the most humble mountain, but it wasn't a valley. It wasn't a flat surface, which is also an important lesson that we learn. And the lesson is that we are not a doormat either. That in order to receive the Torah, you have to be humble, but you have to be confident. The same thing that I said before. I didn't even realize that we were going to get into this, right? We are still getting the Torah on a mountain. Har Sinai was a mountain, okay? She was tall, right? But she was humble. So that's us. We're not a doormat. Just because we're humble doesn't mean we're a doormat. We can stand tall and proud of who we are and who we work for, who we're walking with, okay? All right. So Moshe Rabbeinu, again, the humblest man on earth, he was chosen as the medium for delivering Torah to the world because he was unmatched in his humility. Therefore, he is known as the greatest of prophets, and the greatest level of Shekhinah rested upon him. We know that Shekhinah medaber mitoch grono shel Moshe. Okay, he's mitoch grono. From his throat, the Shekhinah spoke. Okay, that is the connection between Hashem and Moshe Rabbeinu. He was the most humble of men. He delivered the Torah. He was completely, well, we don't have to get into it now, but we understand the personality. Okay, so like simcha, like joy, which we talked about, I think, in our previous class before Pesach, humility is a natural partner to bitachon. Okay, so they go hand in hand. Reliance on Hashem needs humility, right? We have to be humble. In order to have full dependence and reliance, we can't be full of ourselves. We can't be arrogant. We have to know who is running the show, right? That is because both humility and bitachon are based on recognizing that without Hashem, there is nothing. We are nothing, right? There is nothing but Hashem. We can accomplish nothing. We don't have a business. We don't have it's nothing. It's all a puppet show. It's all a facade. We don't have our diplomas. It's nothing. If it's not Hashem's will, it's not going to happen. It has nothing to do with whether you went to this university, that university, right? It's all Hashem. We can't fool ourselves. When we're humble, we are wide open to receiving Hashem's presence, which is always there for us to receive. On the other side of the picture, a person who is full of himself has no room for Hashem. He thinks he's in control, that his successes are due to his own power and genius. When things go wrong, he blames others. We see this victim mentality all the time in this entitled society that we live in, and goes to battle to redress his grievances. Oof, how timely, right? He leaves no place for Hashem in the picture. As smart as the arrogant, so on the one hand, when things go well, he takes all the credit. Forget God. There's a God in the world. It's all me. And if things go wrong, it's not me, it's everybody else. It's right? Everybody's to blame but me, okay? And not only that, they become angry, despondent, and depressed people, etc. Okay, as smart as the arrogant person might feel, when he questions Hashem's running of the world, he shows his ignorance of spiritual reality, okay? So yeah, they might feel very, very smart, but the reality is that it's complete ignorance to think that you're the one running the show, okay? You actually have a complete myopic vision and no sense of what reality is. Rabbi Hillel Sachs once offered a mashal, or a parable, that portrays this foolishness. So he's going to tell us this little story, this mashal, about this boy who is allowed to enter the cockpit of the airplane, right? Many of us have been on a plane, and our kids are allowed to go and see. And he looks at all the buttons, and it's very cool and it's very impressive, right? And the levers, and he points at this one red button, and he asks the pilot, "What is this?" And the pilot answers, "And the rest of the cockpit, do you understand?" Your only question is about this red button. So the idea is that when we realize that we know so little, that we don't even know how much we don't know, we have built the perfect platform for bitachon, right? When we realize, you know what? It's all Hashem. Who am I? I'm a limited creature. I don't know anything. It's not like the pilot is saying, like, what? You understand the entire thing? You're just asking about this one thing. You know nothing about flying a plane. You don't know nothing about any of these buttons, right? We know nothing. We are just emissaries. We're a creation, right? We have to be humble and understand who is the real independent existence here. It's only Hashem. The rest is all creation. Nothing stands in the way of our reliance on Hashem, and nothing stands in the way of his reaching into our lives and helping us, whether the trouble is down the road or upon us. So powerful is this concept that according to the Chidah, someone who is humble, even if he has a death decree upon him, heaven forbid, he will be saved. Further, he observes the words Hashem Elokai, Hashem my God, have the same numerical value as the word chesed, loving kindness. So the obvious connection is that humility draws Hashem's compassion. The Chidah adds, and it is as if he has brought all the korbanos. Remember that in the past verse, we talked about the korbanos, the sacrifices. We have seen this idea previously. Humility is a form of giving ourselves over to Hashem, which also is the hallmark of bitachon. Our egos and wills become like an offering. We're saying, it is not me, Hashem, it's all you. And it's so interesting. He brought this idea of chesed, and that Hashem, my God, is the same gematria, the same numerical value as the word chesed. And this reminds me of the 7 qualities of an entity in whom we put our trust, right? The 7 qualities that God, our loving, caring Father, has. And what is the number 1 quality that we learn from Shara Bitachon, Perek Beis, the 2nd chapter? That he's loving, that he's kind, right? He's my Father who loves me, has pity and mercy for me. That's the number 1 quality of the 7 qualities, right? And then we start adding. And not only this entity in whom we trust has to come from a place of full, absolute love and mercy, but he has to be strong, and he has to be wise, and he has to be close, and he has to be responsible, and he has to be attentive, and he has to be extremely generous to the deserving and the undeserving, right? These 7 qualities, they have to be so solid in our mind. So one of those qualities is this attribute of chesed, of kindness, that we always have to remind ourselves, where is this coming from? It's coming from my loving, caring Father. He has pity and love for me and mercy for me, okay? Okay, so one's first step in seeking Hashem's help is to recognize him as my God on whom I totally rely. A person who recognizes that only Hashem can make things happen is humble. Build humility, he says, and by keeping Hashem in the picture when you face a challenge. And I will add to that, keep Hashem in the picture always, not when you're just facing a challenge, because guess what? That way, when you're facing a challenge, naturally your brain will go exactly where it needs to go, with to Hashem, right? So we have to train ourselves to do this constantly, keeping Hashem constantly front and center. Do we have time for chapter 6? I think we do. So chapter 6, page 38. Bitachon, what is in Hashem's name? So this is also a beautiful chapter. And the pasuk here, the verse here is, all those who know your name will trust in you, because you have not forsaken those who seek you, Hashem. So it's very interesting. This reminds me of Michael Safdie, who often says in his daily Bitachon WhatsApp message, where do we turn to? I always say it in class because I love it so much. What's my address? What's my destination? My address is Yud K Vav K. Right, that's my address. I don't have to go to the bank. I don't have to go to my friend. I don't have to go to I go straight to the Yud K Vav K. So we're going to talk about the name of Hashem, okay? So what does it mean to know Hashem's name? Many commentators help us clarify this seemingly impossible requirement. Okay, so the Orchos Tzadikim says that you need emunah in Hashem's all-powerfulness. If you don't believe he can do anything, then you can't have bitachon, right? So again, that's one of the qualities, one of the 7 qualities that Hashem has is that he is invincible. He's so strong. Nothing can stop him, right? If I was going to rely on something, but he can be stopped, it can be stopped, right? We have all these qualities. He's attentive. He's 24/7. He's not going to be sleeping. He's not going to be on a plane when you need to reach him. And he's not going to be limited in his strength and his power to do something like a hurricane can stop him, or a depression can stop him, or a recession can stop him. No, no, no. He's completely invincible, right? We have to know these qualities of our Creator. So, because if you don't have it, you don't have it ingrained, then you can't believe that he can do anything. And not only that, you can't rely on him. You can't trust him. If he doesn't have those qualities, which he obviously has, and if you don't know that he has these qualities, and you rely on and you believe that he has these qualities, then you can't rely on him. Okay, so the Malbim says similarly that he can perform miracles and that he is constantly supervising your life, right? And I don't know if I said it before we went on Pesach break, but what we saw in when we saw 3 weeks ago with the 300 missiles. That were shot at Israel, right? And the all overt, obvious miracle that we saw, we have an obligation to recognize, and we can't make the mistake of saying, it was our partners, the governments, our allies, not our partners, our allies. It was the Iron Dome. Those are all great, and we are appreciative, but we can't lose sight of the one that needs to be thanked, because he's the one that did it, right? It's Hashem. It's Hashem. And we have to be cognizant to also teach our children and teach ourselves that these miracles that we talk about in the Haggadah, that we just experienced, leaving Mitzrayim, leaving Egypt, and 10 plagues, and the splitting of the Red Sea, we often get so cynical and we say, well, those things don't happen anymore. Well, you know what? They happened. They just happened. And we just saw it. And you, my children, in your generation, you were able to see a miracle of biblical, just like they're told to us in the Torah, just as big a miracle you were able to see, because even scientists can tell you that there is no way that this could have done according to science, right? There was, who did I share with you guys? The scientist that said how there was there's no way statistically that these could have been intercepted in the way that they were, and there was only one little girl hurt. It just doesn't happen. So everybody who has a little bit of seichel, intelligence, is able to say, and humility, is able to see this is an act of God, overt, obvious, complete. And don't be foolish. And the fools will be, and the arrogant will say, oh, it's technology, it's this, is that. No. Okay. Anyway, so Rabbeinu Yonah says, you know him, meaning God, by recognizing his pure kindness and goodness, the wonders he has performed through history and today, and his incomparable kindness in creating the universe, which doesn't stop being created. He didn't create it once. He continues to create it, right? It's continuous creation. We, the Jewish people, believe in continuous creation. Hashem didn't create the world and then moves back and step back. Hashem is constantly, every millisecond of your life, Hashem is making every single thing exist. And if he didn't want it, we wouldn't have this internet, this computer, this microphone, this clothing, me, the desk. None of it would be here. All he would have to do is stop speaking it into existence, and it would all go away. So none of us are independent existence. We're not independent. Only Hashem is the only independent existence. Everything else is completely dependent on the one who is continuously giving it life, okay? Willing it to live, to exist. So likewise, the Chovas HaLevavos in Shar Bitachon says that a prerequisite of Bitachon is to know God's kindness and greatness. And actually in chapter 7 of Shar Bitachon, on this last chapter of Gate of Trust, we learned this exact thing that Rabbi Sutton is mentioning here. There are 3 impediments to trust. And one of them is that we don't know the 7 qualities of Hashem, and how Hashem is kind and compassionate and strong and all those, and attentive and responsible and all those, and wise and close, and all the 7 qualities, and that he's the ultimate cause of everything, okay? So one of the impediments is when we don't know this about God. So it's very important. This chapter that we're discussing right now is very important. It is fundamental that we know Hashem, that we know his name, that we know who he is. But there is another level of knowing God, which is knowing his name, okay? So here, the Bnei Yisachar discusses the profound understanding we gain when we take a closer look at this idea. We know that when Moshe Rabbeinu asked Hashem to tell him his name, Hashem answered with a four-letter name of Yud Kei Vav Kei, which we are not permitted to pronounce, as we all know. This name has two meanings. The first is that Hashem transcends time, right? He is, he was, and he will be. Nothing came before him, nothing exists beside him, and nothing will exist after him. Secondly, it means what I said before, he continuously brings everything into existence, right? The concept of continuous creation. He didn't just make a world that exists separate from him, like a carpenter who makes a table, right? He makes the world yesh mi'ayin, something from nothing. Everything we do, because we are creation, we do something from something, right? We cannot create like Hashem. We take flour and oil and eggs and we can create a cake. We can't make a cake out of nothing, right? So Hashem is the creator and he's not separate from his creator. When I make the cake, I can leave the kitchen. Remember, I went to the kitchen and my daughter had left and I took a bite of the biscotti that she left on the counter, right? But where's my daughter? So how come the biscotti are there? The creator of the biscotti is gone? Because creation here in this world is by my daughter. It's not real creation. Hashem cannot remove himself from the creation. If the creator would remove himself, there would be no creation. He can't stop creating. If it's here, he's continuously creating, right? But if I make a table, if I'm a carpenter, right, I am existing separately from the table. So my daughter Batsheva is existing separately from the biscotti. The biscotti are on the table over there, and I was able to grab them. But Hashem is identical with his creation. If he didn't exist, none of it would exist. Because nothing exists. Only Hashem exists. You understand? This is like basic fundamentals of Chassidus. If he withdraws himself from anything, whether it's an atom or a star, it ceases to be. So this is actually in Tanya. This is actually in Tanya and Sharav Yichud Ve'emunah, in the gate of unity and belief. This is exactly what the Alter Rebbe is explaining here. So it's a very, very important concept. So when a person realizes that everything in his life is nothing but an expression of Hashem, then how could we be angry? We can't be angry, or how could we be scared? It's all Hashem. It's all creator. It's all good. It might be concealed. It might be very concealed good, but it's Hashem is allowing it to be. He knows that no one other than Hashem determines what he gets or doesn't get, because again, nothing has independent existence. And we go back to chapter 2 of the Gate of Trust, where it clearly tells us that no entity can harm you or benefit you. Nobody. It might seem like they can. It seems like they can. It seems like everything is independent existence. Everybody thinks they're a yeshus. They're an entity of themselves. We are not. Nothing is and nobody is. Okay? So the person who has bitachon knows that no one other than Hashem determines what he gets or doesn't get. No one else causes his successes or his failures. This is the full meaning behind the verse. Those who know Hashem's name rely on him because they realize that God never left them. Okay? Because they realize there's nothing else but God. Ein od milvado. There is nothing else but Hashem. So he gives us here a super story. He asked the question, Rabbi Sutton, how does this influence our path in life? The following story of a simple woman from a previous generation paints the picture. So here's the story. So this is 1948, and there's a Rav Smith who is from Chicago, and he goes to Eretz Israel by boat. Obviously, 1948, before the War of Independence, Eretz Israel was under British rule. So on the same boat, traveling to Eretz Israel, was this woman, this older woman, Mrs. Shoshana Sokol, who was 91 years old. Can you imagine making that trip at 91? And she was also from Chicago, and she was obviously headed to Eretz Israel. So when they met in the boat, he asked Mrs. Sokol, where will you be going when you get there? And she says, I don't know. I'm just going to Eretz Israel. Imagine, it's like Lech Lecha, like Avraham Avinu goes, I don't know where I'm going, but Hashem said, go. So this woman's going like with simple faith. He's just going to Eretz Israel. She doesn't know what. So he says, Well, you really have to choose a destination. You have to know where you're going in Eretz Israel, because the British are going to want to know. Like, it's not so simple. You don't just get there and the British are like, okay, sure, Mr. Sokol, go wherever you want. If you can't answer, you could end up on a boat back to America, or worse yet, they could detain you in a camp in Cyprus, right? Like, he was being very practical and giving her solid advice. Look, the British are ruling over there, and it's not, you don't just get off the boat and say, I don't have plans. You have to have a solid plan here, or they might detain you. So she says, well, I have a nephew in Eretz Israel, but I don't know where he lives. In fact, I've never even met him. He doesn't even know I'm coming. Can you imagine? It just happens to be that I have a nephew. I don't know who he is, where he lives. I just know his name. He doesn't know I'm coming. So he says, so how's he going to find you? And she says, I have faith in Hashem. and this man who's trying to help this woman says, the British are very tough on immigrants. If there's no one there to meet you, Mrs. Sokol, you will surely end up in Cyprus. This is not a joke. So this 91-year-old woman says, listen, young man, I am 91 years old, and the good Lord has never failed me yet. He will look after me now as well. Imagine the simple faith, right? The complete reliance and knowing that I'm taken care of. Hashem never failed me. He is completely reliable. Okay, so this man backed down, because he says here, Rabbi Sutton is writing the story. He says you can't argue with pure and simple faith, and you really can't. Okay, so when the ship docked, British soldiers boarded, and they ordered the passengers to produce their identification papers, as expected, and every passenger's name was called in turn. And when Rav Smith's name was called, he stole a moment to take a quick glance back at Mrs. Sokol, and he was prodded on along his way. He was wondering, like, what's going to be with this woman? So when he finally sets foot on land, a young newspaper reporter approached him, and he says, Rav Smith, I heard your name called, and I'm wondering if I could interview you. So the rabbi says, not here, young man, not with a gun on my back, because again, he has the patrol, the British patrol on him. Give me your phone number and I'll call you from my hotel. Once I'm off of this and I'm settled, I'll call you and we'll do the interview. So the reporter hands him his business card, or a paper with his name, and its name says, last name Sokol. And he says, wait, is your name, he does, this man that's coming off of the boat says, is your name Chaim? Do you happen to have an aunt in Chicago? And he says, yeah. How did you know? How did you know that my name is Chaim? How did you know that I have an aunt in Chicago? And he says, well, she's going to be following me down the ramp very, very soon. And at that moment, the loudspeaker announced the name of the next passenger, and aided by a helpful soldier, Mrs. Shoshana Sokol stepped off the boat right in front of her astonished nephew. Looking in the direction of Rabbi Smith, Shoshana Sokol smiled and called out, I told you Hashem wouldn't fail me. Isn't that a story? Isn't that a story? And we can be cynical and say, come on, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to go with a plan like that. Okay. But we have to get the point of the story. The point of the story is Hashem is dependable, but you have to believe it. You have to believe it, and you have to put your reliance exclusively on Hashem. This is the introduction says, trust in God alone, the most important qualifier of the entire Shara Bitachon, right? Exclusivity is one of the 5 conditions for Bitachon to be real Bitachon. It has to be exclusive. Okay, so the Avudraham says that this dynamic of I rely on only on Hashem and He never lets me down is the message of our bracha in Shmona Esrei that says, we say it every day, give goodly reward to all those who rely on your name in truth. This means that a person knows the truth, the emet, that Hashem is emes, that Hashem is truth. And as the Rambam states, Hashem is the only true existence. Ein od milvado. He is the only true existence. He is the only independent existence. There is nothing but Him. All other things that exist rely on Hashem. Everything relies on it. Everything needs Hashem. It wouldn't be here if Hashem wouldn't be speaking it into existence continuously. Everything else is essentially an image of that Hashem is constantly generating into the world. We ask Hashem in Shmona Esrei, in the Amida, to reward those who search and understand this, and therefore rely totally on Him. And as Mrs. Sokol proved, He doesn't let them down. All right. So recap, knowing Hashem means knowing that he is the all-powerful creator of the world who is purely good and kind. Knowing his name, Yud-Ke Vav-Ke, also means knowing that Hashem is the only entity that truly exists because everything depends on his existence. And with that understanding, a person does not worry or resent what anyone else does. He depends totally on Hashem and trusts Hashem to take care of him. So we have to, Rabbi Sutton tells us we have to adopt Mrs. Sokol's motto: when doubts and anxiety run through our mind, speak back to them with the words, Hashem will look after me. He can do anything. And better yet, he has never let me down and he won't let me down. All right. So that's our class for today, ladies. Very nice and good to be back. Let me just look in the chat for a few minutes. Amazing story. I know, I love this story. Okay, let's see. I love that. Wait, I went back to two classes. Okay. I love the parable of a wife asking her husband for flowers for her birthday. Okay, so here's the parable, okay? Thank you, Eileen, for sharing with us. The parable goes like this. The husband expresses that he does not understand her request, since a tool set would be a better gift because it will last, whereas flowers will die. And she explains that him giving flowers to her will show her his greater trust and live to bring and love to his greater trust and love to bring her flowers, because that is her request, even if and especially since it does not make sense to him, but he does it anyway as she requested. Okay, very nice. So we're talking about the fact that we don't know the things that Hashem is, sometimes we don't understand the things that Hashem is asking us to do, right? And yet the higher level is to do them, even if we don't understand. Similarly, giving a sacrifice to Hashem, exactly. We may not understand why Hashem requests us to bring a sacrifice, but when we do so, especially because we don't understand, and rather we do so explicitly or solely because Hashem asks this of us, right? With Kabbalah's all, with complete recognition of who the king is, and it shows greater bitachon to act as Hashem asks us to do, even or especially if we do not understand why, even if it doesn't make sense to us. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Thank you so much. Okay, any
I have a story. Yeah, it's going to crack you up.
Wait.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's so cool. So cool. I love when we get these winks from above, right? Okay, ladies, any other questions or stories or comments? We're good? All right, so then I will see each other next week. Yeah, did I hear anybody? No. Okay, good. Okay, so I'll see you guys next week. Have a good Shabbos. Bye.